Hey folks, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast. It is your host, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and thank you so much for joining me here. And friends, we are in the midst of summer. A lot of us are clawing our way, just trying to make it through. And I thought it would be a great time for me to kind of give a little highlight or an overview maybe of the process of where I started back in 1998, walking through kind of the selling and all that I've gone through, because I know how discouraging it is. And I'll be really honest, we're in July. August used to be the hardest month of the year. It is still hard just because it's super hot, right? And often drought. But flower farmers have more flowers than they do perhaps at other times of the year. Field growers, I'm a field grower. I've never had any hoop houses or greenhouses. But yet sometimes the markets that you've chosen for yourself and created or just getting started aren't buying flowers then. So I'm trying to prepare you before you hit that plateau of knowing we've all been there. So I thought a little walk through the evolution of the Gardener's Workshop farm business would be really, really helpful. And Tucker has decided that his toy that has the crinkly stuff inside is what he wants to play with right now. So if you hear that, that's what we've got going on here. In the beginning, and I tell you the other part of this. So, Bobo and I are the harvesters here on the farm. And she and I happened to be in the same garden yesterday morning, Thursday morning, 2 mornings ago at the same time. And it was kind of shady there. So which meant, when we're in the shade, I'm more inclined to chit chat. When we're in sun and it's hot, neither one of us talk. We're just got our head down, moving as fast as we can to get the job done before it gets hotter, right? And we were reminiscing about a lot of things. So that's what also spurred me for us to talk about that. And in the beginning, friends. So before I jump into this, if you are a new person to us, if you're a new friend that's traveling along, welcome. And if you want to learn more about what I'm doing, what the Gardener's Workshop crew is doing, there's tons of resources over at thegardenersworkshop.com. Videos, blogs, all of our podcasts, our online garden store, our library of on-demand online courses, as well as our big business schools. If you want to start or scale a flower-based business, you'll find it all over at thegardenersworkshop.com. And friends, sign up for our weekly farm news, which is kind of like a headliner of all the different things going on. We'll keep you up to date. And I invite you to come on over and see what it's all about. So, the beginning dreams of a flower farm. We've all been there. I can remember back when I first started. I mean, y'all, dinosaur years, 25 years ago, just about now. We didn't have social media, so you didn't have this vision of an illusion, actually, of what you think other people are doing. I basically had the book, The Flower Farmer by Lynn, Byczynski, best book ever, that launched many of us into this career. Had that book and a few magazine articles, and not much else. So I, like so many of you, in the beginning wanted to grow everything. I went straight from knowing nothing to really knowing nothing, but yet starting to do a lot of things that I knew nothing about. And that meant, I can remember investing in bulbs. I actually bought in some plugs of a perennial whose name I'm not even going to say. Was totally the wrong thing for me to buy. And of course you had to buy like a gazillion of them. So I had a gazillion of them, and they weren't a very in-demand product, but yet I was, oh my goodness, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. So I was a real novice. When I started flower farming, I was barely a gardener, y'all. Um, so I made the same mistake that so many people make is you just thought it was about growing flowers, but that's not really what a flower farming business is about. I mean, if you're just growing flowers, that means you're a gardener gone wild. It's when you start selling flowers is when you become a cut flower grower or a flower farmer. So I wanted to grow it all like everybody. And the other illusion that I had, myth, was that I was going to do it totally weedless. That I didn't know what I was going to do about weeds, but I thought I was not going to have weeds. What a dream that was. I do remember that one article I read, and I think I've mentioned this before, was actually in the Reader's Digest. My grandma got Reader's Digest, and if you've read my story about how I started flower farming, it was visiting my grandmother. She was paralyzed after a stroke, and she was in bed for 7 years. Anyway, my day was Tuesdays to be with her, and Reader's Digest was one of the reading materials available that I would read to her. There was an article in there about two couples. Well, a lady wrote it. Her and her husband and their friends decided they were going to start a vegetable farm. And anyway, I read all about their crazy journey. But the lesson that she shared, like the end of the wrap up, was the one thing she learned was to get the weeds when they're tiny. Once they get big, if you think you don't have time to do all the work now, let weeds get big and you really never have time to take care of them, right? And that was a really good lesson learned that I preach today about, right? Anyway, so I had this illusion that I was not going to have weeds, which is totally a myth. We all have weeds. It's how you manage and prevent as many as possible that makes life livable for me. So, what happens when you go down that road of growing it all and having this image in your mind that you're going to have a weedless garden, you're going to sell it all, this dream, it's really is a dream, right? And so what that all leads to is burnout, that leads to crashing and burning out and quitting. And I was almost there for the first couple of years, right in that August time that I was speaking of earlier. You're working your butt off. Oh my gosh, I can remember being so hot I thought I was going to die because I was overworking, doing it all wrong. I mean, oh my gosh. I look back and frankly, I do not know how I survived. And so I would get to August, then September would come, business would pick back up again by nature of fall being the second in demand only to spring. Those are the shoulder seasons are really when people are really wanting the most flowers. And then winter would come, right? And you get refreshed and you forget about all those hot days and you do the same thing all over again. You try to grow it all. You have that myth anyway. So I finally got smart or didn't get smart. I got smarter or more experience and started to figure this all out, which meant that I needed to streamline what I was growing. I needed to grow what grew best for me in my conditions with the least amount of input, the least amount of income, to have the greatest profit, right? Because I'm all about the numbers. So I began to streamline what I was growing, meaning frankly, in a nutshell, I wanted to grow what I could sell week after week after week to the same old customers that wanted that. Because when you sell to the same people more, you have less expenses, y'all. Anyway, so I finally figured out, and I have to say this, I still have, construction is part of my life now here on the farm. We have a big project going on our home, and there is nowhere for me to escape an occasional noise. So if you hear noises in the background, that's kind of what that is. So I began to realize that I needed to grow fewer crops and grow more of them, and to be able to grow them for as long as I could. Because again, instead of having a new crop every 2 weeks, you have to reintroduce, get people used to, get them to know that they really do want this flower. It's be easier to have a crop that you can just, they know that you're going to have it and they know they want it, right? So I realized that I needed to streamline what I was doing and scale up what I was doing. So, friends, this is the whole point of this conversation right here is I want you that are feeling discouraged, haven't found your way yet, or are in the throes of being discouraged. And it was, encouraged to talk about this, not only because of mine and Bobo's conversation, but I'm seeing on social media, and specifically one of my students posted, I think it was one of my students, not sure which group it was in, said how discouraged they were to bring home bouquets that they had made at the farmer's market unsold and to compost them. Well, I want to just say several things about that. First off, Dave Dowling and I's motto has always been, you should be composting 20% of what you're growing. That means that you have more flowers than you can sell, which means that all your customers have a good selection to select from. That is normal. That is what your goal should be. But that doesn't happen out of the gate, friends. The whole point of this talk is to highlight that I've hustled my butt off for 20 some years to be at the point of having all my flowers sold all the time, to have demand. I spent many a year of having July and August where I composted a lot of flowers. I spent, holy cow, a lot of years. I mean, years of seasons of July and August cutting flowers, knowing they were not going to be sold. Because if I didn't cut them, new flowers wouldn't come for when the season did restart itself. And that's all part of figuring out your system, what your market is. Now, we did farmers markets for 14 years. Then I went to supermarkets. There was some overlap there. And supermarkets have the same problem. People, unless you live in so if you live where you're in a vacation destination kind of situation, then during these times that those of us that don't live in those places, you're the opposite of us. That's when your markets pick up. I can remember talking to a student that lived at the foot of like somewhere in Colorado in the mountains, where she gets so inundated with business during July and August, she can't even possibly dream of, it's a wedding destination place. And she can't even begin to dream of ever. She said, I could use like 15 more farmer florists in my area. We have so many people coming here to get married. So that's the opposite. So the grass always looks greener on the other side of the fence, friends. But that grass has to be mowed too, right? So I want to say that the smart, successful, I don't want to say smart, the people that figure this out to go on to do this long haul, figure out what their niche is and how to grow to that niche. And this brings me to the thought of the reminder of two friends that have become our instructors, and they became our instructors because of their smarty pants of figuring this out. That is Jonathan and Megan Leiss of Springforth Farm. Their course is the No-Till Microscale Flower Farm. Do y'all realize that their whole business was formulated around their lifestyle? Not really the market. Well, the market played a role in it, but they knew that their young family, that they wanted to be able to grow flowers to create additional income for their family. He has an off-farm job. He's a fireman. They built their business around the high demand of spring and that summer sales were slow. So basically, they have built everything around having flowers as early in the spring as possible and getting the highest dollar during the highest volume. Then they literally shut their flower farming business down for the summer. That is so they can grow food for their family. They homestead. They can grow food for their family. They can take family vacations. They can have family time. And then they get back into this role of flower farming and do a lot of fall planting. And I mean, y'all, it's like, it's not that what they're doing is so unique. It's that they stepped back and took the 30,000 feet view of their niche, of what their life want was, and then they catered to that instead of like what I did for several years. I just kept growing all these flowers in the summer because that's when they would grow and grow high volume and then potentially not have sales for them. Well, I did something a little bit different. I then built my niche into selling to florists and becoming their staple flower supplier. And just very briefly about that. So that meant florist. I didn't focus on events for my florists. My florists do weddings and stuff, but that's not the flowers that I sold to them. They use some of my flowers for those things, but I figured out the flowers that they use week after week after week after week. Even during the slow times for events, which would be July and August, people are still dying. Funerals are a big part of florist business, y'all. Big part of their business. Also, their day-to-day sales, I mean, the I'm sorry, the happy birthday, the office stuff, all that stuff. They're using staple flowers, not these specialty peaches and blush and all that kind of stuff. So it turns out that I trained my florist to rely on me, that I became their standing orders. So even during July and August, during the slow time for events, my florists were still buying big flowers from me because guess what? I was supplying the flowers they were putting on casket covers, on sprays, on, I'm sorry I screwed up bouquets. And so I'm just saying, you either have to figure out how to grow for the shoulder seasons and take advantage of the slow times to be your downtime, or do what I did and find the niche for those times that you have flowers. And if you are in that journey of figuring that out, I'm just here to say there is a pot at the end of the rainbow, but you have to figure it out. It's not that it's going to come knocking on your door. I mean, finding your niche is a really unique thing because, for instance, like I knew that I never wanted to do weddings. You do realize that if you do events and weddings, that means you're going to work every weekend of your life, Saturdays and Sundays, because that's when those things happen. So I had already put that off the table. It was enough that I went to farmers markets on Saturdays. I never did a Sunday market. And the drive for me to figure out the supermarket business back in the times where it wasn't so much information available was that I wanted, instead of me packing my truck on Friday to go to a big market on Saturday to sell a bunch of flowers, hopefully, I wanted us to be making bouquets for supermarkets on Thursdays to deliver to the supermarkets on Fridays, sold before I leave home. We're doing it in the air conditioning. I wanted that market, but it took a lot of work. It took a lot of hustling to do all of that. So I just wanted to share that Yes, you might be having a slow time, but friend, you are not unique. You look at people like me that says, oh my gosh, all my flowers were sold, but that's not always the case. I had to hustle my bum off to actually do it. And you have to have some brain space and time to figure out your niche. Whether you decide to follow Jonathan and Megan with their model that they share all about in their course, which you can find more about at the Gardener's Workshop, or you look at the way that I did it, and there's other models, friends. There are other models. I'm just saying these are two said, examples. And, all of that success has led me to where I am today, where the business that I have built, the Gardener's Workshop, into, where we have become a supplier of the same tools, seeds, and supplies that I use, because I went through during that time of, so in 2005, 1998 is when I launched my flower farming business. 2005, I launched the Gardener's Workshop online garden store. And that story is really deeper than that, which I actually share in previous times, which that's another talk. But during that 1998 to 2005, what I did during the winter months was I started talking to garden clubs because I was trying to sell my local flowers, right, to those local people. Well, what grew out of that is that I love teaching. People wanted to learn. And that's when I launched our online garden shop. Then, then during that same time is when I warped into high production. We did, doing 23 florists, 2 supermarket chains. It was a very crazy time, y'all. Built an amazing crew to help me do all of that. So we had this big online business as well as growing and selling flowers. And that all happened because I brought on a lot of help. My business took on a very different footprint than what I started with. And now, it's in 2022, 24 years in, that whole business is based on all of those years of failures, successes, heartbreak, scared, afraid, highlights, wonderful stuff. Everything I do today is based on all that journey, really. Ups and downs. And I'm just here to say that, Bobo and I, the way our conversation kind of ended, so we're in such a different place today. I mean, things are still changing, right? So last year, 2021, was our farewell season of selling the flowers that we grow. Our business changed to now we grow this giant garden for projects. And have super big project we're working on now that it's just, I'll be telling y'all about that in the coming months once we get a little bit more of it under our belt. But the way that we manage our garden and take care of our garden is totally different. Here's a case in point. So we've added this new shop and show, which is what people have been begging us for. They didn't know that's what they were asking us for. They were asking for more information about how I use the stuff that I sell, which is the same stuff that I use, and to know more about the flowers that we grow for them to be able to grow them, right? So now all of the harvest from our cutting garden is harvested not only for education, for images and video, for our courses and books and all that stuff, but on Fridays when I do this shopping show, we do this big harvest on Thursday so I can show you what the flowers look like. And so Bobo says to me on Friday, she said, she's over there cutting the zinnias, which is her love, and I was cutting the cosmos. She said, whoever said old dogs can't be taught new tricks? She said, now when we're harvesting, Instead of, throwing down any flower that's not perfect, meaning we're not going to sell it, we keep it because we are creating this vision of this voluptuous harvest to be the backdrop for our shopping show, right? Those flowers aren't going to be sold. So if a zinnia has a chew mark on it or a spot on it, which means a bug has pooped or peed on it, nobody can see that from 10 feet away, right? So we keep all those flowers. And so the motto, let me see if I can think of what I told her. I said, now our motto is, how does it look from 10 to 15 feet? We're not looking for a perfect bouquet, a perfect flower, for instance. She said, you mean I don't have to judge a zinnia being sold at $1.50 at a market? It's, dead from a distance, So does it look dead from a distance is our new threshold of putting it in a bucket. Versus, do we have to say, oh my gosh, nobody would ever want this flower, or we would never deliver this flower to a customer, right? Anyway, I'm just saying, business evolves, friends. And Bobo and I were just really lamenting on the fact that now that we have figured it all out as much as we can, we are doing it so differently. And, I just want to touch on that weedless myth that I started out with. So one of the biggest helps to me, Bobo and I also were sharing that we have figured out in our big picture of our farming system for a large cutting garden or on a farm, we know that suppressing weeds in the first few weeks of planting a garden. That's why I don't do very much direct seeding. I only do it in the fall for a very few cool season hardy annuals. We transplant everything in spring, very early spring, and then throughout the summer because we have better ways of suppressing weeds. And whether we do that through using the Bio 360 film, which we use for all of our transplants in the fall and in very early spring. And then as the season heats up, we evolve to putting a little bit more of mulch down either on top of the Bio 360 to get rid of the heat problem, or we do no-till on those beds and just top those beds off with mulch and plant into them. We've just gotten so much smarter. What I'm saying to you, friends, is there is no one way, in my experience, to do anything. And as we are learning these things, that's part of what we just love sharing with our students and our customers and followers. So, friends, there you have it, the evolution of the Gardener's Workshop Farm, where we don't all ever do it all right, for sure. And what's right for me is not right for you. One of the things that I think makes it hard for me as an instructor and a teacher is people are constantly asking me for exact answers. And I can't give you an exact answer because even if you live where I am, our skill of farming and gardening is different. What we do is very, very different. The state of your soil, the equipment you have, all of that affects what you should do. And that's why I really try to teach people how to fish, not give them fish. And it's harder. It takes longer to figure that out. But friends, I'm here to tell you, those that take the high road instead of the low road, and the high road's always harder and longer, have the best case scenario of creating a system that you can be profitable and continue with, that your family will support you with, that when you go on to hire employees will create a culture that they want to be a part of and help build up, and they take pride and ownership in. And, I just can't emphasize enough. I love this life that I've built. That does not say that it was easy. I can tell you that there were times, I'm just thinking of some years when I was in a bad way. I was overextended with work time and everything else related to that. And I lived on the edge. And I'm just so grateful that I learned another way. And that's what I love teaching you guys about. So, friends, it will change, but the only person that can change it is you. And here's to helping you do that. And friends, until we meet again, head over to thegardenersworkshop.com. Follow out some of our instructors. I would recommend all of their social media feeds to learn more about them. A lot of them are given a lot of great information all of the time. And none of us got here overnight, friends. And with that, I'm going to say ciao. Hey, folks. The Field and Garden Podcast is honored to be partnering with the Growing for Market magazine. They have been publishing practical ideas and information for direct market flower and vegetable growers for over 31 years. All the articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. The magazine is still on the same mission as when the Flower Farmer book author Lynn Byczynski founded this magazine back in 1992 to connect growers with the best ideas from other growers. There is dedicated flower content in every magazine, a decade's worth of back issues, and over 1,600 archived articles from writers like Aaron Byczynski, Gretel Adams, Pamela and Frank Arnowski, and Jonathan and Megan Leiss, all available on the website. With 10 new issues every year available on paper, digital, or both, you're guaranteed to find something to fine-tune your farm in growing for market. So if you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stands, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or you just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of local farming. And I have a special offer for you. Use the coupon code WORKSHOP to get 25% off any subscription to the original Farmer to Farmer magazine at growingformarket.com.